Well, a good morning, one and all. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. Sun is shining on everyone today, I think. Haven't heard from Scotland as yet, but it's certainly shining here. It's shining, I think, where Dan Cullen is. I think it's shining where Mick Norton is up in Wakefield. I think it's probably sunny everywhere. Gary Muirhead has just arrived without a weather report, but he's going to say this. Good morning, guys. Sorry for the absence yesterday. Couldn't get Wi-Fi up here. Need another 50p in the lecky, sir. That's what it normally takes. We've got a weird one for you today. A bit of a left field thing. We're going to do another poll, actually, based on a news story that is, well, I think it's a news story. I'm not entirely convinced it's a news story, but I think it's a... We'll see. Okay. Just while I was saying it was sunny everywhere, in walks Dan Cullen. Good morning from a wet and windy. He's down in Plymouth. My experience, Plymouth is generally wet and windy. You get those 1 or 2 days where you think, isn't this part of the world glorious? Rest of the time, absolute hell on earth. So yes, we've got a news story for you today, and we've also got a poll. Poll worked very well yesterday, and it continued over on LinkedIn yesterday. Not sure if I'll be doing that today, but yeah, it's a new feature, and we're gonna do our best with it. Jim Turner has just arrived. Morning, peeps. Cool but bright and dry in Nottingham today. Good to hear it. Good to hear it. As it stands at the moment, Dan Cullen is the only outlier. Kevin Hawthorne, 5257, says, good morning from Lakeland, Florida. What is the time of year? I know what the time of day is. What is the time of year? Have you got the sunshine, Kevin? Do you have sun? I mean, Florida, notoriously sunny, but do you have the sun today? Or are you, is it, I'm saying that, it's probably the middle of the night, isn't it? Or early hours of the morning? What is the weather where you are, Kevin? Gary says, yes, there's a big yellow thing in the sky. I haven't seen it in a very long time. I know, it looks unfamiliar. I'm currently searching for my sunglasses as we speak. Very interesting weather here. One day fantastic, next 3 either windy and wet. Yes, that's Plymouth right there. As I say, we've got a news story, and you have to forgive me. I will remind you when we get there. You have to forgive me in the way that I deliver it, because I'm planning to take that news item and use it as a YouTube short later in the day, because I do think it has wider interest than maybe this show. So without further ado, let me roll the intro and get this show underway, shall we? Yeah, Ken Hatcher with his daily weather report. It's raining where he is in Wales, and Kevin over in Florida, 61 degrees right now with some fog. 61 degrees. I'd be wearing shorts and a t-shirt in 61 degrees. That we consider that the height of summer here. And Fat Tidge says, hello, how are you over on Instagram? I'm doing absolutely fine. Doing well today. Thank you very much indeed for asking. It is Tuesday, the 14th of April. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor. You know the rest. In today's show, we're going to be tracing the origins of tungsten. Yes, we're all familiar with tungsten and its properties, but we're going to show you where it comes from. The American love affair with Engcon continues. We'll be bringing you that as well. In the world of Volvo, even the maps are connected, and John Deere drives efficiency. And in today's morning monologue, I'll tell you now, it's called On the Make. It's called On the Make. I don't know how well that translates, but it's the global grift we're talking about. Mr. Malinowski just joined us over on Instagram from Leeds, from sunny Leeds, and Dan saying, yes, we're in a tungsten mine. This is not one of yours, actually, Dan. I think this one's from Austria, but keep an eye out for that. Was hilarious when they realised their mistake, put in a pipe to take water to the pumps when they sealed it, and the water was coming up under the lining. Not sure what that relates to. The second biggest seam in the world, apparently. Well, let's hold that thought about all things tungsten, because as I say, we do have a bit of news for you today. It might just be me, but I it's kind of troubling news, and I just want to be very clear. Mr. Malinowski is He's actually in Canada. Okay, not Leeds, or maybe there is a Leeds in Canada. I don't know, but he's in Canada. So, good morning, and thank you for joining us about this time. That's all the Canadian I've got. Right, news. Is one of Britain's most iconic industrial giants about to pack up and leave? The future of JCB in the UK is in question today, as the Bamford family has issued a devastating ultimatum to the British government. Joe Bamford, heir to the £1 billion JCB fortune, has warned that the firm may be forced to relocate to the United States to protect the business from a massive inheritance tax raid. Under new Treasury rules, family-owned enterprises worth over £2.5 million are being stripped of long-standing tax exemptions and are facing a 20% tax rate for the first time in decades. Bamford claims the move could be necessary to prevent the empire from being broken up and sold off to meet tax obligations. This potential exit threatens thousands of jobs across Staffordshire and beyond, as industry leaders warn that the death duty is becoming an act of self-harm for the British economy. Now, as I say, my apologies for delivering it like a newsreader. I know that's not my usual style here, but I do want to clip that after the show. Now, let me go over to here. To here. There we are. You can see there on the bottom left of my screen. Do you think JCB should or could leave the UK? That's the question for today. If you think they could, should leave, type leave in the chat. If you think they could or should stay, type stay. Now, to widen that conversation, obviously, I think we are all aware of the fact that JCB, or more specifically Lord Bamford himself, Joe's father, is a contributor to the Tory party. He's not the biggest fan of all things Labour. So you might say this is possibly a bit of anti-Labour sabre rattling. But bearing in mind the inheritance tax, our man, Lord Bamford, who has done an enormous amount for that company, is not going to be there forever. It passes on then to Joe and George, I guess, his two sons. What happens then? And would they have to break up the company, sell off chunks of it to pay their inheritance tax? Now, before anyone else says it, there has been talk about JCB's tax and stuff in the past. I'm well aware of that. One thing that and I realize two wrongs don't make a right here. Very, very well aware of that. But here's the question that I have. If we are allowing the likes of, for example, Starbucks and Amazon to operate here virtually tax exempt, why in God's name are we threatening a huge tax hike for one of the literally the last pillars of British construction equipment manufacturing? You know, we've seen the demise of the likes of Hymack and Priestman over the years. JCB stands almost alone. I know we've got Thwaites. I realise Komatsu are building excavators here in the UK, although I wouldn't necessarily class them as a British manufacturer. JCB is a world famous, it's a pillar of our manufacturing, and we could quite easily send them packing. And I will go over to the chat in just a moment, but one of the things that struck me about this, I do remember watching an interview. I think it was like a Michael Parkinson interview. I realise that's kind of an aside, but he was talking about his decision to leave the UK and to go and live in Los Angeles. Bear in mind, you know, Michael Caine was, you know, is a very proud Londoner and everything else, but that was driven not out of career choice, although obviously he did have a very successful career over in Hollywood, but it was driven by the fact that he was about to be taxed beyond belief. So he upped sticks and he left. Could JCB do the same? Should they do the same? As I say, we've got a poll running. I'd love you to type leave or stay in the chat. Gary Muirhead has just said stay. Ken Hatcher is saying stay as well. Wow, this is big news. Well, I'm saying it's big news. It feels like it's big news, but I'm not sure. As I say, I mean, all of the newspapers that I've seen that have picked it up is, I think it's the Mail, the Express, and the Telegraph. I've actually got, I may be even able to show it to you. Where are we? I think this one is the Express. So all of the newspapers thus far that have picked up on it, when that comes in, there we are. As you can see, all of the newspapers that I've seen that have picked up on this are all the right-leaning press. So it might just be, Joe Bamford saying something in conversation and all the right-leaning press have picked up on it. It might be that. It might be a reflection on the fact that JCB is very, very close to the Tory party and they're not particularly keen on Rachel Reeves and everything else. But the very fact that this has been mooted, and don't forget, JCB already manufacture out in the States, and they've just committed, in fact, they're underway on the construction of an even bigger factory over in the States. I'm not saying it would be easy. I'm not saying it's imminent, but could it actually happen, I wonder? Dan Cullen is pleading with them to say it, just on that basis, just to let you know. I've actually written an open letter to JCB, which is due to actually arrive on LinkedIn, I think, in about 15 minutes or thereabouts. My own personal feelings on, please don't go. Don't go. Don't leave us. Ken Hatcher saying it's definitely anti-Labour. I agree. But I wonder how much is anti-Labour. And I also wonder, that's not the sort of thing you drop into conversation, is it? Isn't that something that you may have thought about? And okay, the questioning, I don't know the context of Joe Bamford's conversation with the Express or the Telegraph or the Mail. I don't know the context, but I wonder how that came up. It's not the sort of thing you just throw off the cuff. Surely that must be something they've considered, maybe? Mick Norton says, reading in China, Zoomline's new smart factory in Changsha, they're producing an excavator every 6 minutes. Can even the mighty JCB compete? It's a good question. Big news to us, big news to the UK. Government don't care. I realise, as I say, I'm not a fan of politicians of either inclination. The one thing I would say about this is, you, as a government, you've got to do a balancing act. And I understand that, the desire for everybody to pay their way and everything else. But, I'll go back to say the point about Amazon and Starbucks, and they're not alone, basically avoiding tax here in the UK. But also think about the number of people that JCB employ here in the UK. Think about their supply chain here in the UK. Think about their dealers here in the UK. Think about their customers here in the UK. All of that gone because because we're not getting enough tax input out of, I keep saying it, out of the likes of Amazon and Starbucks. We're going to penalise one of the last bastions of British manufacturing that we've got ourselves. We can't penalise the Americans, so we penalise ourselves. That is shooting ourselves in the foot, reloading, and then shooting ourselves in the other foot, if you ask me. Dan says, this will kill the manufacturing industry in the UK if JCB believes. What would happen to the plant and the factories? Yeah, exactly. What would happen? And listen, JCB is probably, I'm not even going to say probably, absolutely must be the biggest single employer in Staffordshire. Must be. What happens then? Do we have mass unemployment in Staffordshire? And if we do, what do the government do about that? How much is that going to cost the government in unemployment payments to the thousands of people rendered unemployed by this move? Ken Hatcher says the government helped JCB in COVID. One of the first companies. Not sure they actually needed it. From speaking to a few people about people that actually had loans, I think part of it was kind of a what if. I know a few people that took out loans because they at the time they took the loan, they couldn't see an end in sight for COVID. They didn't know how long it was going to last. They didn't know whether we'd ever actually open up our front doors again. So it was an ultimate safety net. And I know of a few people took out loans and they actually paid them back even before the COVID thing was over and done with, because it's like, well, actually not as bad as we'd once feared. You can have your money back. But I do wonder about that. Dan saying that's unreal about the Zoomline factory. It could happen easily if JCB wanted it to. The UK government should be helping them big time. I agree. You missed my other comments, says Dan. Hopefully I've picked up on that one. Ken, government Treat companies like commodities. They want more tax to line their own pockets. Yeah, absolutely. JCB have actually a big college as well as training new engineers. Yeah, like I say, you think about it. One of the things that I think is often overlooked with JCB is their wider impact. I'm just going to see if I can put that back up because I'm not seeing any answers. And I know a few people have answered on that. This poll thing doesn't seem to work particularly well. Let me give it up for the time being. Yeah, the wider implications. Obviously, the JCB World Headquarters, where they manufacture a lot of their machines, but all of the components that are coming in, both from overseas and locally, there is a school, there's a college, there's the museum, there is the golf course, and so it goes on and filters out, and even people that have been through the apprenticeship program, and I know plenty of those, they've been through the apprenticeship program. You know, they've had the yellow injection, but they've been made an offer elsewhere, and they end up working somewhere else in this industry. Be it, I mean, the current UK managing director of Bell, for example, cut his teeth at JCB. You know, they are a contributor beyond the metal. They are a contributor to the UK economy, way beyond bits of metal and pounds and shillings and pence. They really are. Ken Hatcher saying the poll is too small and I can't see it. Maybe I'll do it somewhere else. Where would the unemployed people get jobs? Could they change careers and find jobs? Yeah, exactly. Now, I mean, because of the quality of people that JCB produce, I would imagine there would be a queue to actually sign some of them up. There's every possibility that some of them, particularly the younger ones, might say, move to the US. You're damn right, I'm coming with. There could be a bit of that, but that wouldn't be everyone. That wouldn't. And there's also the other thing that there are many things I admire about JCB, but one of the things that I admire very, very much about them is their ability to retain staff. There's a guy, I don't know if he's still there because I've not been there for a year or two, but there's a guy who works there. He used to work on the factory floor, you know, assembling backhoe loaders and loadals and stuff like that. When he finished, he didn't want to leave. So they've now put him down. He's basically the tour guide, the ambassador. So when you get a guided tour of the JCB factory, this is where we make the backhoe loader. This is where the excavator booms are pressed and everything else. The guy must be 80. He's got to be 80 years old, but he doesn't want to leave. And you see that a hell of a lot with JCB. Imagine. That's the point. You know, even now, I find it hard to imagine the UK construction equipment industry without Hymac, without Priestman. Imagine without JCB. And obviously, the JCB name is not going away, but the JCB factory could. It could. JCB has recently invested 100 million to modernize their roaster plant, also 60 million on the new paint plant. Not the signs of a company bailing out from the UK. All true. But what would be, I mean, bearing in mind what we're talking about here is a multi-billion-pound company. If they were, you know, if, God forbid, something were to happen to Lord Bamford and it passes to his two sons, what is the tax bill there? And it might actually be cheaper. Never mind the 160 million they've put in there. It might actually be cheaper to just say, enough, we're off. We're going to switch our flat caps for Stetsons, and we're going to go and move to the US. Dan says, what about the older people that work there for years? Will they be able to find new jobs? Probably. Some will, because as I say, the quality of training at JCB is UK-wise almost second to none, I would say, but not all of them by any means. Andy Thornton has just walked through the door and said, morning, chaps. I'll pass that on. Chaps, Andy said, good morning. Ken Hatcher said, let's hope it's a warning to the government. I hope so. As I say, I've written an open letter to JCB, and I'm doing it as a fanboy. I'm setting aside the fact that I'm a journalist and independent and unbiased and everything else. I've written an open letter to JCB, pleading, imploring them please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. And you'll see that it will land on LinkedIn at 10:30, I think. Shall we move on? Because we've already devoted 20 minutes to that and we've got a show to produce. So let's have a bit of this. Right. I know we have an expert in our midst, Mr. Cullen, who is currently, I don't know if he's actually extracting tungsten at the moment, but he's working in a place where they do extract tungsten. It's a word I've written a lot, and it's a material that I'm aware of, but I've never really given much thought to where it comes from. Well, now I can.
My name is Stefan Eckenreich. I'm the mine manager of Mittersill Underground Mine, largest tungsten mine in Austria.
Nindel René, bitte kommen, Nindel René, bitte kommen.
Tungsten is the metal we know with the highest melting point, the same density as gold, same hardness as diamonds. So in all metal cutting and cutting industry, tungsten is going to be from very high importance in future, and also with the high melting point, if we are talking about space equipment, tungsten has got a very high importance as well. It was in the 1990s when first machines went into operation from Sandvik in Mittersill. Mainly the LHDs, it's a Toro 10 or the succession LHD, the LH517, so 17-ton LHDs. In total, 8 of them of different kinds. So with the oldest LHD still operating from 2003 and the newest one from 2025, it was only the logic step to convert to the I-Series, which is operating now in many parts. So all the new equipment is I-Series equipment, delivering us a lot more information about the operation. We've got 2 DD422i operating. We've got one bolting machine, a DS411 operating, and long hole drill rig DL432i. Most of the maintenance is done by our own guys, and with us belonging to Sandvik, they are also have got the lectures and the lessons to maintain most of the Sandvik equipment. But if needed, guys from Essen are coming and helping us on the equipment. This crushing plant underground, we're going to save about 150,000 liters of diesel on the trucking each year. The long-time strategy for Mittersill is to ramp up the mine, to go for the newest equipment, to be one of the most economic and feasible underground mines in Central Europe, and to go for further automation and be one of the safest underground working places in the world.
Yes, Dan, that is a lot of diesel. Apologies if you saw me leave. Postman arrived. Mick Norton says this. JCB's political threats must be conditional, not set in concrete. Totally agree. The one thing, and again, I realise the purpose of this show. I realise who the audience of this show is. Obviously, we're talking here specifically about JCB being a family-owned company, being threatened with the potential of a huge, absolutely massive inheritance tax bill should anything, God forbid, happen to Lord Bamford. We're looking at that as JCB, but think about all of the other family-owned companies within this business, but also within the wider, the British Isles. The whiskey manufacturers up in Scotland, for example, the hotel chains down in London, the family, most of the demolition industry to this very day is family-owned. Family-owned. What happens? What happens to them? I think they would find it harder. Can a demolition company up sticks and move to America? Probably not. So are we going to see a continued... We've already got a bit of a trend in the industry, in the demolition industry, selling the company basically to its staff. I wonder if we could see more of that. If you're faced with a potential, multi-million pound inheritance tax bill, maybe the workarounds will start to proliferate. We shall see. Dan says that's true. It's widespread and it's going to destroy smaller companies. Yeah, I mean, this is not meant to be political because I'm not talking specifically about the Labour government. I'm not talking about me. But where is the incentive to build a family business as a legacy? I mean, none of my children want to do what I do. So when I finally hang up my boots, this will all go away and, people will move on with their lives. But what is the incentive to build something potentially to pass on to your children and to your grandchildren when you know full well that having paid tax all your life and paid over the odds to actually be here in the UK in the first place, to pay too much for fuel, too much for energy, too much for staff, blah, 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 blah. At the end of it, you've still got to pay the government a huge wad of cash, even though others possibly competing with you are not doing likewise. Where is the incentive to build a legacy company now? On that cheery note, let's have a bit of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick spin back to Las Vegas. More specifically, we're going into the festival grounds to see the mighty Engcon, who were very, very hospitable to some of their existing customers. We met up with a few of them while we were there, and this is one of them.
Matthew Mac Lipka, Black Diamond Landworks out of Kalispell, Montana. Mainly residential projects, start to finish, foundations, lot clearing, utility septics, that kind of stuff. Some small, light commercial projects, parking lots, etc. Company I worked for before purchased one, and I was the main operator on it, and I really saw all the benefits for it. And when I went on my own, I knew I wanted to have that tool in our arsenal to help make us more productive and a better finished product. They're so much more efficient doing, backfills, excavations on slopes, all the different attachments for retaining walls, compaction, working with trees, everything. And less machine wear, less cleanup on job sites, kind of everything about it. Just it's a huge plus. If you don't have one, you're going to start falling behind. The versatility of the tilt, rotate. You can get a bigger machine in a way smaller area. It's more capable of doing all sorts of stuff on a job site, and I feel leaves a better product. You once you learn it, you keep your work site way cleaner. Even down to the machine, you're not moving around to get in position to do tasks. You can stay in one spot and do it. Less track wear, less fuel burn, and just all around more. You can get more work done.
He said it all. I don't need to comment on that. I will go back to this with Dan, who says, this tax thing, why would you want to build a company and then have to deal with this BS? I think this is the more important point. This is an economy killer, and people will just dissolve their companies, I think. Possibly. Imagine, as I say, I don't want to, in fact, I won't even name names, but imagine you've built a demolition company, a construction company, a plant hire company, or a manufacturing company, and there you are on your deathbed. And up until fairly recently, your family are gathered around you, and you can say to them, sons, daughters, whatever, all of this is now yours. Everything that I've built, everything that I've sweated over, everything I've toiled to achieve is now yours. And instead, thanks to Rachel Reeves and her cronies, what you'll actually say is, my family are all gathered around me. I'm about to take my last breath. Here's a big fucking tax bill. Tatty boy. Imagine. Dan says the interior of that Deere looks like a Dash 5 Hitachi. I wasn't watching closely enough, to be honest. JCB sold 123,228 machines in 2023, representing £6.5 billion in total sales turnover. It's a lot of iron, isn't it? Now, listen, there is manufacturing taking place overseas already. They're manufacturing in the States, they're manufacturing in India, possibly elsewhere as well. We know that. But imagine, I mean, even if the UK was just half of that, let's say that JCB in Uttoxeter and the other bits around it, because they're spread over various parts of Staffordshire. Imagine that they're half that, 60-odd thousand machines. Stop. Go somewhere else. Mega Demolidora have just joined us. That sounds Spanish or Portuguese. I'm thinking South America. Whereabouts are you, Mega Demolidora? I'd love to hear from you. Let's get rid of this. Jim says, cool, they should voice their concerns and consider moving. They've worked damn hard to get where they are today. They should put the business down as a charitable trust with all the family booked down as board members, and fuck the government. Bearing in mind the size and the wealth of JCB, I would imagine they've probably got their legal eagles looking at workarounds. Well, I was going to say as we speak, they've probably been looking at workarounds for quite some time. I hope they find one. Personally, I do hope they find one. Let's have a bit of this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
We live in a world today where machines are connected to the cloud. They're connected to satellites. They're connected to stakeholders. They're connected to people and to head offices. Everything's connected. In the world of Volvo, even the maps are connected.
My name is Karen Newport. I am the current CEO and Vice President of GS Materials. I oversee the 3 mine sites in the state of North Carolina. We produce approximately 2 million tons a year of fine aggregates. Today we're actually at the site in Harnett County, which was started in 1984. It's still producing today. We ship approximately 2 million tons out of here, and we currently have about 20 pieces of Volvo equipment on site. So we're intending on using the software to monitor the productivity and efficiency of our equipment. We are going to use the geofencing of the connected maps to monitor our raw material stockpiles, our finished material stockpiles, and our waste. Additionally, we're going to use it from a safety perspective to restrict areas on the mine site that we don't want our equipment going, and also to restrict the speed around the plant and pedestrian areas. We're connecting 6 articulated trucks and 5 front-end loaders.
My name is Charlie Knapp. I work for Ascendum Machinery. I handle some of our IT issues, assist customers and technicians with any services or subscriptions they subscribe to through us. I help them walk them through any issues that they may have, and also with any installations that they may need. So the customer was interested in being able to more thoroughly track their machines and the productivity of their machines on site. They reached out to us in Volvo to get them set up with a service to help them with their needs. We installed SIM cards and all the Copilot screens on all the machines and activated the connected map service for them.
Very simple.
Yeah, given that the conversation about all things JCB has kind of taken over the show today, very quickly, if you're on our WhatsApp group, and I know most of you are, if you're watching over on Facebook or YouTube, I've actually just posted a link in the WhatsApp group to my open letter to JCB. Not for me, more for JCB, to show them the weight of public feeling on this. if you would care to add your name to the bottom of it, or agree with it, disagree with it, listen, I'm here to be shot at. Have a look. The link is in the WhatsApp group. Please click the link, go and add your feelings to it. It's over on LinkedIn, so if you're on LinkedIn, you'll see it anyway, but it's in the WhatsApp group right about now. You can go and take a look, and as I say, add your voice to the plea for JCB to not leave us. Please don't leave us. Dan is asking a question, and I do find this slightly ironic. He's asking the world leader in ADTs to reconsider their design. He says, now, why don't they put the cab position more forward like a rigid truck and have better visibility? To be honest with you, I mean, I've driven not just Volvo ADTs. I've driven Bell, Komatsu, Caterpillar. I think that's about it. Never had a problem with visibility, to be perfectly honest. I find excavator visibility way worse. Telehandlers, nightmare. But yeah, Mick Dalton says, based on JCB's pre-tax profit of 2023, £805 million, UK government likely received about £200 million in corporation tax from JCB that year. Yeah, they're already taking £200 million from JCB. And now they want more should anything untoward happen to Lord Bamford. Isn't that being taxed twice? I'm not even asking the question. That's being taxed twice. You're taxed while you're making it, and you're taxed when you pass it on. Does that seem fair? Is that right? I think if the truck cabs were repositioned like a high-ridge excavator high-rise cab instead of a tilty cab. Dan, listen, I'd like to think that folks like JCB maybe are tuning in. Maybe they'll take your idea and run with it. You never know. You never know. Let's have a bit of this, and then it's morning monologue time. This. Just to give you a very quick heads up, as I say, I know JCB have kind of taken over the conversation this morning, and we're talking about the government ripping off companies. My morning monologue today is about us people ripping off other people. It's called On the Make. It got my goat yesterday when I started thinking about it. That'll be today's morning monologue, which will be along in about 5 minutes' time. But first, we need to see John Deere and their drive for efficiency.
I've always had a passion for building things. Every day I've gone to work, I've said, you know what, we're going to build something today. Every time you drive past that project and there you're like, hey, I helped build that place. You know, that's part of us. We've been in the sewer and water and excavation business since 2004. I had uncles that were plumbing contractors, and that's where we got our start, was basically doing plumbing work. My son Frank, he was like, Pops, we're here, we have equipment, why don't we just do the excavation work along with our sewer and water work? And that's what we did.
We're father and son, you know, we're out here, we work every day together, shoulder to shoulder. We have a John Deere 650P smart grade dozer and a 350P smart grade TopCon excavator.
Since we've been dealing with Westside and John Deere, they've really helped us expand our scope of work. It's been truly a game changer with the amount of product that we can move in a short amount of time, with the grade control. That's our John Deere story.
They jumped in feet first and they use it on every one of their projects, and you've heard them talk about, I don't see how we did this before. And they were a great contractor prior to. This just makes them that much faster and more efficient.
The smart grade systems integrated with our files, our job site models that we create, it's really been a time saver and really streamlines the production on a job site.
You put your smart grade on, you have your elevation, and you just go to work, and you're able to be more efficient.
When you're spreading stone or you're cutting subgrade, you're doing it efficiently, and you're not making multiple passes or having to stop and have somebody go check a grade for you. You have it right there on your screen. You know exactly what your elevation is, you know where you are, and what you need to do.
It makes the job easier. It really does in every aspect of, you don't need a secondary surveyor here giving you grade stakes to tell you what your elevations need to be. The support we've had from Westside, from their grade control division to the sales to the service, has been phenomenal.
Using remote display access and ops center, we can fix problems as quickly as possible. A lot less downtime, more uptime, more efficient, less cost. With the way that bidding is, especially in the Chicagoland area, our margins are so tight. You don't have the wiggle room to make a mistake.
Technology is real important these days. There's a lot of larger contractors in the Chicagoland area that if you're not up to speed with the technology and the site control and the machine control, you won't be able to get any work. We can't see operating a piece of equipment now without smart grade. It's truly been a plus for us.
So this poll feature that I've now got, it does work, as it turns out. I think apparently what I'm supposed to do is to have it hiding in the background, and then when I stop it, it all becomes clear. The results become clear. So we have a result for today's, and I can tell you, do you think JCB could or should leave? And the question was, should they leave or should they stay? 100% resounding JCB should stay. I know it's very small on the screen there, but you can see the blue line at the bottom. Everybody that voted has said, JCB, like me, please stay. I hope they're listening. That's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. I'll be back tomorrow. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll be back immediately after this to talk about the national pastime of the UK, grifting. We are living in a world where seemingly everyone is on the make. We've moved from a society of, ouch, that hurt, to, ouch, where's my solicitor? My own travels through this comedy of errors we call modern life is peppered with examples of everyday people on the grift. Take for instance a trip to a local supermarket many years ago. I was with my oldest son, who was about 5 years old at the time, an age where gravity is less a law of physics and more of a personal challenge. We came across a puddle of spilled orange juice. Now, in a sane world, a supermarket worker would see a spill and fetch a mop. In our world, however, they fetched a yellow plastic A-frame sign and left the juice exactly where it was, presumably waiting for it to catch out an unsuspecting shopper. Now, I told my boy to stay clear. And naturally, he did the opposite. He ran, he slipped, he went down like a sack of spuds, and he started wailing. Before I could even reach him, two women descended upon him. Now, you might expect a bit of maternal comfort or a, there, young man. No, not a bit of it. They looked at a crying 5-year-old, and their first instinct, their very first thought was, you should sue the supermarket. Think about the sheer hollowed-out cynicism of that. A child is bleeding or bruised, and instead of a hug, they offer a litigation strategy. It's as if the milk of human kindness has turned sour. Then we have the crash for cash brigade. I was driving near home, minding my own business, when the driver of the car in front decided to play a game of brake light roulette. The lights turned green. They edged forward and then, for no discernible reason, slammed on the brakes. Crunch. I was doing about 3 miles an hour at the time. I've had more violent encounters with a revolving door. Yet out they tumbled, 3 young men, all clutching their necks as if they'd been tackled by a prop forward, each of them shouting about whiplash. It was a theatrical performance that would have made the Royal Shakespeare Company blush. Fortunately for me, the audience of the drivers all saw it. Fortunately for me, the audience of other drivers saw it for what it was. And once these victims realised that the weight of evidence was firmly against them, their miracle recovery was instantaneous. Necks were healed, shouting ceased, and they sped off, presumably to find a more gullible target. And if you think the grift is isolated to dry land, think again. It's the same story on the high seas. I was on a Mediterranean cruise, 10 stops, 14 nights, total luxury. But one evening, the unthinkable happened. The ship ran out of Bud Light. Now, I don't drink, so this maritime calamity barely registered. But the scene at the customer service desk was like something out of a disaster movie. Grown adults weeping into their Hawaiian shirts, claiming their entire holiday was ruined. Ruined because they had to drink one of the other 30 types of beer available for 12 measly hours until the ship restocked at the next port. The sense of entitlement is staggering, but it's not about the beer. It's about the leverage. It's about finding that one tiny crack in the service and trying to jimmy it open until a refund pops out. But for those of us in this trade, the real artistry happens during or just before a blowdown. I remember a tower block in Scotland. We were at T-minus 15 minutes. The crew was doing the final sweep, the air heavy with anticipation. Then, as if on cue, the windows of the neighbouring block flew open. It was like a choreographed ballet. Out came the laundry. Every flat, at exactly the same time, decided that 9:45 a.m. on Demolition Day was the optimum time to dry their whites. The senior engineer just sighed. Always happens, he said. They weren't drying clothes, they were baiting a trap. They wanted that dust cloud. They wanted their sheets to come back indoors grey so they could file a claim for damages. And bizarrely, I saw exactly the same thing in Portugal less than a month later. Different country, different language, same old story. 20 minutes before the charges went off, the white sheets appeared like surrender flags. Please blow some dust on my laundry so I can get a new washing machine out of your insurance company. And this is what we're up against. We're unpaid extras in a nationwide scam. We've imported this ambulance-chasing culture from across the pond where if there's blame, there's a claim, has become a natural obsession. The no-win, no-fee solicitors have done a marvellous job of turning us into a society of victims. They've convinced the average person that life's little bumps, scrapes and inconveniences are in fact untapped revenue streams. It's created a culture of hyper-vigilance where we don't look out for each other, we look out for liabilities because there's potentially gold in those liabilities. When you see a crying child and your first thought is legal action, we've lost our way. When you deliberately hang your washing out in the path of a demolition cloud, you've lost your dignity. And when you fake a neck injury at a traffic light, you've lost your soul. People are quite simply on the make. And until we stop rewarding the grift, that laundry will continue to come out. Insurance premiums will continue to rise. And the spilled orange juice will be the first step on a slippery slope that leads inexorably to the court steps. All true. All true. And one of the things that triggered it, I'm sure you have exactly the same wherever in the country you are. We've had a warning on a local Facebook group here about Uber Eats and I can't remember the name of it. You know, these food delivery people. They'll go and fetch your takeaway for you. Apparently, the drivers, all on their little mopeds and their electric scooters and stuff, they found a new source of income, or they believe they found a new source of income. Ride down the middle of the road, veer off to one side, whack your car or whack your van as you drive past, and then lay in the road claiming that you've knocked them off. And we've had a warning on the local Facebook group: don't get out your vehicle, don't engage with them, don't give them money, blah de blah de blah. It's a grift, is what it is. Nacho Reyes has just joined us again. Buenos dias desde Colombia. Buenos dias to you, my friend. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Let's go over to the chat to see what you're all saying about stuff today. Now, Mr. Free Money and Dancing Girls, good morning all. Neil Illegitimo Carborandum. I don't even know what that means, but thank you very much indeed for being here, Chris. You've missed talk about JCB possibly upping sticks and leaving the country. Possibly. Tiny little possibility, but a possibility nonetheless. And Chris is almost on their doorstep. Well, almost. Chris, never mind the equipment. I mean, obviously mind the equipment, but never mind the equipment for the time being. If JCB were to up sticks and move to America, what would be the impact upon your local community, your local economy? I'm guessing the word would probably be devastating, but let us know. Mick Norton says, the location of ADT cab is dictated by engineering physics, visibility requirements, weight distribution, and rollover risk, not styling tradition or operator preference. Constrained design, he says. Dan Cullen saying, great monologue, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I sometimes share the inspiration. The inspiration for this was quite simply that we've had so many instances of people feigning injury, and we've had 4. Excuse me. I'm about a 4-minute walk down there. Is a place called Stoneleigh Broadway. It's about 4 minutes away from where I am. We've had 4 instances in 2 weeks of people doing this down there. It's quite a busy thoroughfare. There's a railway station there, so people arrive and leave by train, but they arrive and leave their car there. There's a lot of shops down there. There's a Sainsbury's local. There's a co-op there. So I say busy. It's not Regent Street or something like that. But we have thousands of people go through there every day. But we've also got takeaways. We've got a burger joint, got a couple of Chinese restaurants, an Indian restaurant, a kebab place, all of which do this Uber Eats. What's the other one? Deliveroo. They all do those kind of deliveries. So we do have these mopeds and scooters going up and down the place. And apparently, amongst themselves, they've decided that a way to earn some additional cash is to feign injury, basically pretend they've been hit by a car. You need to give me, excuse me, you need to give me some money or I'll report you to the authorities. And that's the way it works. By the sound of it, the very fact that they've been doing it for a couple of weeks now, A, they've not been caught, and B, they must be getting something out of it. The one in the Mediterranean, if anyone's been on a cruise, you'll know this. This is how they work. So we left from Southampton. So you have a couple of days at sea where all you see is sea. That's all there is. But from that point on, from the moment that you touch land for the first time, you are basically in a port for a day. You get back on the ship, having had a mosey around Marseille or Barcelona or whatever it might be. You get back on the ship, and it drives through the night. And then when you wake up the following day, your entire landscape has changed because you're now in Rome or somewhere. That's how they work. So overnight you're traveling, during the day you're stationary. So when this ship ran out of Bud Light, it did so in the evening, but by the breakfast time the following morning, that Bud Light was back in stock. But there was a queue. And when I say a queue, I'm talking about possibly 100 people. Our holiday has been ruined. That's my favourite beverage. We've paid specifically to enjoy copious quantities of Bud Light, and you've deprived us. You've ruined our vacation. I've not had a vacation in 100 years, and now I've got one. You've ruined it by restricting my access to my medicinal brew. Bollocks. Absolute bollocks. To carry that on even further, and this is absolutely true. This is absolutely true. I think it was the second time we ever went on a cruise, and I'm not, as you've probably gathered, I'm not the most social person in the world, but there was a bunch of people all having a bit of a chinwag. I was laying there pretending to be asleep, not getting involved in it. But a member of the crew, one of the staff that go around and make sure everybody's okay, was asked, what do you lot do when we all go to bed? And you could sense that this was something that had been asked before. And the guy said, and it was clear, literally from his tone of voice. I was laying there with my eyes closed, but I could sense tone of voice. He went, "Well, don't tell anyone." He said, "But when everyone's gone to bed, a helicopter lands, and we all get on it, and we fly off to land, and we have a big party with selected members of the passengers. We go off and have a party, and then we creep back in the hours of darkness, land the helicopter back on the heliport, and we insist that they don't tell anyone about it." Now, for one thing, cruise ships don't have a heliport, so let's be absolutely clear about that. This was clearly a well-rehearsed and probably well-practiced and often trotted out story that he'd concocted. And I was laying there with a smile on my face, and a few people chuckled. One of the women that heard that story went, "Well, I'm offended. Why haven't I been invited? Why I've paid as much as everyone else. Why am I not being invited to this private party and the helicopter ride?" And you could sense it was like, I've missed out. I could probably get some compensation having been overlooked for this imaginary trip to dry land. That's how people are. And the one with my son, I don't want to overgeneralize, but when a kid, I mean, literally, it was one of those, a bit like something out of Home Alone. He ran into this pool of spilled orange juice, and his feet went from under him, and he landed back first and then whacked his head on the ground. My first reaction was to go along and smack him across the arse for having ignored me when I told him not to go anywhere near it. But two women who you would think would be very maternal. "Oh, don't worry, lad. You'll be okay. You'll be fine. Don't stop crying." "No, you should sue. You should sue. This is a health hazard. Your son's lucky to be alive. You should sue." What? And I bet they're probably illegally driving, no license, or under someone else's license. They're all carrying L plates, aren't they? They're all carrying L plates. And listen, I rode for a good 18 months on L plates back when I had my motorbike, so I'm hardly one to cast aspersions. But surely, if you are doing a job that requires you to ride a motorbike, admittedly only a 50cc motorbike, but if you're doing a job that requires you to actually operate that vehicle for your job, you would have thought that a full license would have been kind of a prerequisite, wouldn't you? Let's think about the industry we're all in. You've got to have a competence card to prove that you can drive the machine that you need to do your job. The people on motorbikes delivering your burgers and your kebabs and your Chinese takeaway have no such restriction. Going back to what I was saying about JCB, does this feel fair? Does this feel like a double standard? Because it sure as fuck does to me. Chris Ford, going back to the economy of Staffordshire and the environ, says, as you rightly say, the outcome would be devastating. Not only locally for the employees' business that supply them, it would kill the whole area. Yeah, yes, it would. It absolutely would. I think this is one of the things that I think is often overlooked when we talk about companies going out of business. We tend to think about, if JCB were to up sticks, immediately you think about the people on the factory floor who have been assembling backhoe loaders and excavators and mini excavators and so on for years, decades. Maybe they are second, third generation JCB employees. You think about them first and foremost. You think about the people next door in the admin area where they handle the sales and the live link system, where they're dealing with the dealers, and handling supply of machines and handling logistics of materials coming in. You think about the people next door in the JCB Experience Museum. You think about all of those. But if JCB were to shut up shop tomorrow, what would happen to the local newsagent, where virtually everybody that works at JCB calls in for the morning newspaper or a Mars bar or a can of Coke? What would happen to the local exhaust centre where JCB people leave their car to have a bit of work done on their car while they're at work, so they can go and pick it up in the evening. What happens to the local hairdressers that keep JCB employees looking suitably well coiffed? What happens to the local clothes shops, the local supermarkets, local schools? Imagine the local schools. If you take all of the jobs and therefore the people out of the local area, what happens to the schools? Schools that currently accommodate 2, 3, 5 classes of 30 children each, empty? What happens to the teachers? As Chris rightly says, be great to have a dash cam and not tell them until a day in court, and then your reason for I was not paying, and counter-sue the fuckers. Yeah. There's a little bit of me. There's a little bit of me that quite likes the idea of this happening to me. There really is a bit of me that quite fancies it happening to me, because I feel like I have a lot of fucks in my body, and I'd love to let them all out on somebody. I know of individuals that do this on sites, have an accident when no one's around, no one to say they weren't there. Yeah. And again, I mean, I've had an accident on a demolition site, and thankfully, the people around me, when I got hit in the noggin, their first and only reaction to that was, "Are you okay? We've got you an ambulance. We'll look after you until the ambulance arrives, and then we'll come and visit you in the hospital this afternoon when we finish work." That was, at no point did somebody say, "You should sue. You should sue. Well, it was a fucking accident waiting to happen. You should make a few quid out of this." At no point was that conversation had. Dan also says they take pictures to show the area where they tripped. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Listen, I remember Steve Williamson talking about open manholes, and we've encountered them. These are a thing. Particularly if you're planing a road and you're trying to get rid of the ironwork and stuff like that, so you take bits and pieces out and you leave it unattended. There will be people that look at that and think, best put that manhole cover back on in case somebody falls down there. There'll be others that look at that and go, it's not my job. Somebody needs to put a manhole cover on, but it's not my job. But there will be a handful that look at that and think, I could make a few quid here. If I go and fall down that while nobody's looking, gently so I don't hurt myself, but appear to have hurt myself, I could make a few quid here. Yeah. They walk among us, people. Dan says that's another thing. All these deliveries are on L plates. Why aren't these companies not enforcing full license only operators? Because it costs more money. That's what the gig economy is all about. We will not pay you, a fair wage. We won't give you holiday pay or sick pay or anything like that. And if you kick up a stink, say, actually, I do need to sit my driving test in order to drive this motorbike and deliver your burgers. No, you're gone. We'll get somebody else that will do it free of charge. The supply chain will be highly effective if JCB do move too. Yeah. And listen, I mean, I realise that a lot of the JCB supply chain is global. They are like every other manufacturer. They will be drawing some of their parts and components from China and Korea and Japan. Some of the steel will be coming in from Scandinavia and stuff like that. I'm well aware of that. But all of that could move. Just because we're trying to double tax one of the last bastions of British manufacturing. And let's be absolutely honest about it, okay? We already know that the UK is, cost-wise, one of the worst places in the world in which to make things. It's cheaper if you go over to France, Germany, Italy, Spain. It's cheaper if you go to America. It's much, much cheaper if you go to Taiwan, to China, to Korea. Much, much cheaper. But for 80 years, JCB have flown the flag. They've stayed here probably against their better judgment and against the advice of their accountants. You could do this a lot cheaper in China, And now we've decided we could screw them. I'm fully aware that the country runs on pounds and pennies. I'm well aware of that. I do believe that corporations should be paying their dues in terms of tax. But having paid tax on their income, having contributed to the tax of their employees for almost 100 years, to then penalise them again when the company is passed on to the next generation, that sits very, very uncomfortably with me. Mick Norton says, delivery riders on motorcycles have higher and reward insurance, even if they're on L plates. Is that right? Is that right? Others look at it and think, I'll get a few months off and make 60 grand. Yeah. And listen, certainly in the demolition and construction world, the desire to avoid RIDDOR and all that goes with it is kind of compounding that. I know of plenty of examples where people have picked up a genuine injury. They've actually had a fall or something's landed on them or whatever it might be, and their employer has kindly, very kindly said, if we keep this between ourselves, bit of a hush basis. Here's a few quid. You go and have a bit of garden leave. Go and put your feet up for a few months. Here's a few grand to make it worth your while, and you come back and we'll pretend nothing ever happened. Yeah. And it's not just RIDDOR. If you have an accident, chances are your insurance premium will be increased. So there is a good reason for people. I'm not saying it's a justifiable reason, but there is a good reason for people to divert money. Here's a bit of a backhander. You keep that broken leg on the down low. Let's never speak of it again. We'll see you in a couple of months when you can come back with a suntan and improved golf swing. Yeah. That pretty much wraps up the the entire show. Please, if you would be so kind, please go over to that JCB open letter on LinkedIn and let them have your thoughts. I don't want them to go, and I genuinely mean it. I'm not saying it for clicks and views. I don't care. I don't care about clicks and views. But one of the things I'm going to do this very, very quickly. I'd love to meet certain stars, celebrities, not to get their autograph, not to fawn over them, but to thank them. I did meet Stephen King and I completely flubbed it. My favourite author, and I flubbed the opportunity. I'd love to meet Stephen King again. I'd love to meet Stevie Wonder. Who else? Let's start with him. I'd love to start and just say Steve, Stevie, Stephen, both of you. I don't know why they're both called Steve, but I'd like to see both of them. Just want to say thanks. Thanks for the words. Thanks for the entertainment. Thanks for the music. Thanks for doing what you do. Extending that to the likes of JCB. I realise why I encountered them. It's because of my job. And I write about demolition and construction equipment, have done for nigh on 40 years. But you can only speak as you find. And beyond the machines, beyond the mechanics, beyond the employment, beyond the impact upon the local and the national economy, JCB, to my mind, is a part of the fabric of this country. I've put in the open letter, that yellow of JCB is a part of this country the same way that a red London bus is, the same way that a black taxi is. That yellow of JCB kind of belongs in the British flag. They are part and parcel of the very fabric of this nation. And if one person from JCB reads that open letter and thinks, wow, I did, I know we make a lot of money. I know we make a lot of machines. I know we're forging ahead with hydrogen. But if one person at JCB thinks, wow, somebody appreciates what we've done, I'll be okay with that. So JCB, don't go. all of you can go. You can go now because the job's done. The show is over. I'll be back tomorrow. But JCB, if you are listening, don't go anywhere because we really would miss you. Till tomorrow, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. I'll see you 10 o'clock on the morrow.